Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer. Welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And we're continuing this Steven Spielberg train, and Foster's here to join me. Thanks for coming on, Foster.
Thank you for having me.
If you'd like to tell everybody about your letterbox real quick, so where they can find you.
Well, there you go. Letterboxd is FOSTH101. It's where you can see all the stuff I watch.
There we go. I actually did note, did you put something for Topsy Turvy or something like that?
Yeah,
Is that
last night.
I was on Letterbox this morning.
Yeah.
I just finished watching something, and it's like, you have your little ticker with everybody's stuff on there, and I'm like, that looks interesting. We could talk about that later. But this week we're going to be talking about Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So, which I know for me personally, this was one that I checked out a lot later than most other Steven Spielberg movies and stuff like that. Because, like, you think science fiction for Steven Spielberg, and even specifically Aliens, probably think E.T. And this one's definitely much more of like an adult oriented kind of science fiction. And it gives me a lot of like, I feel like this is Spielberg Arrival in a lot of ways, but we'll get into that. But for those who haven't tuned into the show before, we have 3 segments on this show. So we have coming attractions, our feature film, and some recommendations. And our coming attractions for this Friday, June 3rd, there's a lot of movies coming out this weekend. I'm like looking at first showing, I'm like, there's like 12 movies here. But what stood out to you, Foster?
So do we each take one? Is that how it goes?
If you want to talk about both of them, I could just add on what I was
okay, sure. Them. All right. The big one is Crimes of the Future. Cronenberg himself coming back to do another nasty sort of body horror movie.
Which it's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty excited, and the cast is cool. It's got Viggo Mortensen, which is cool because Viggo's been with Cronenberg in this like later era Cronenberg, like with Eastern Promises and History of Violence, and then Kristen Stewart, Leah Seydoux, I think Scott Speedman is in it. So I'm really excited. That trailer does it for me. I like the kind of weird pulsating music in the background and the sort of futuristic vibes with the typical Cronenberg body horror stuff. I'm pretty pumped for this. And I'll brag again about being a New Yorker. I believe when I'm seeing it on Thursday, David Cronenberg should be there. It was like a last minute thing that I saw, again, just at my local AMC that I go to every week. He should be there, as should Viggo and Leah Seydoux and Scott Speedman, I think should all be there. So I am just sweating.
That is really awesome because my friend Vinny, who I actually saw for the first time in 9 years this weekend in person. For my wedding, he lives near the Jacob Burns Film Center up in upstate New York. And he was telling us like, hey, they have Cronenberg who's going to be doing a virtual Q&A and stuff like that. And then you just went up to him.
Yeah, bam. So like when you look on Neon's page for Crimes of the Future, it says he should be there. I'm still like, I can't even believe it. So I'm crossing my fingers, but that would be really, really cool.
That would be really cool. I'm a big fan of Cronenberg, and I'm a big fan of Cronenberg, like both of these like big sections of his career, because like obviously the earlier stuff with like Scanners and The Fly and Videodrome were very different films than what he has been making in the 2000s. And then Viggo Mortensen, this is going to be his 4th film, I guess, because I know you mentioned already History of Violence, Eastern Promises, and then A Dangerous Method, where he played Sigmund Freud. And this trailer looks creepy. That one shot of dude with like ears all over his face.
Oh, yes. Yes, they released a poster of it too. It's so good.
I'm just like, well, I think that's this movie in a nutshell. So my thing is I'm unbelievably afraid of needles. And I'm afraid.
Have you seen the movie Audition?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's like a horror movie where the big horror stuff revolves. There's a big scene involving needles.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. So I'm planning on not being one of those people who walks out 5 minutes into this movie, but
Yeah.
we're gonna find out. I've only faded once during a movie, and it was 127 hours.
Okay. Understandable.
That really got me real bad.
Yeah.
And then Foster, what's the other coming attraction that we're both interested in?
Yeah, the other one is Phantom of the Open. So this is, to me, it just looks like a really delightful little British drama, which is
Yeah.
probably going to be funny and kind of wholesome, with Mark Rylance in the lead role, Sally Hawkins, Risa Fons, just a lot of great people. Yeah, I don't even know anything about it other than that I've seen some reviews that say it's just like perfectly nice and wholesome and wonderful. And that's, I know I just talked about how excited I am for this body horror crazy movie, but believe it or not, this is also my vibe too. These nice
Counter
little
programming.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's like everybody who walks out of Crimes of the Future and needs like a puppy
Yeah,
or something. It's just like they just walk across the auditorium, walk
yeah,
across the next auditorium with Phantom of the Open playing.
yeah,
But I'm interested because neither of these are wide releases, if I'm
yeah.
not mistaken, this weekend. So I'm hoping, because at least now that I've been regularly going into Philly to the Philly Film Center and the Bourse Theater, one that Crimes of the Future is playing at one of them this weekend. So I'm excited about that. And I'm hoping that Phantom of the Open might be playing at the AMC Classic that I have near me.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we'll see. I'll find out Wednesday when they post all of their show times. So, and after Top Gun makes $150 million this 4-day weekend, hopefully it's not taking up too many of the screens. I have a sinking feeling that's going to be making a shit ton of money again next weekend. But those are some of our coming attractions, along with like a ridiculous amount of other things coming out. Like I believe like Benediction is coming out as well. I'm supposed to be doing a review, I think, for both. I have to double check. I specifically requested movies earlier in the month because I'm like, I'm not going to be around the last 2 weeks of June, so don't bother me. So I have other things to do. But so our feature of the week is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So this is a Steven Spielberg film that came out in 1977, and Roy Neary, an Indiana electric lineman, finds his quiet and ordinary life turns upside down after a close encounter with a UFO, spurring him to an obsessed cross-country quest for answers as a momentous event approaches. And this is starring Richard Dreyfuss, so his second film with Steven Spielberg. We have Francois Truffaut.
Now I completely forgot, I don't think I ever even realized. I don't think I even knew who he was the first time I saw this movie. That was so weird.
It's such an interesting choice to have. And it was so funny because, like, after watching 1941, I'll talk about that more in that episode. Like, Mishiro Mifune is in that. And it's just like, what? And it's like, as Spielberg was dropping in a couple of like big, interesting casting decisions. Like, obviously, Truffaut is a very famous and acclaimed French director. We also have Terry Garr and Bob Balaban with a bunch of hair, which was interesting and unexpected. But so, Foster, what interests you in coming on for the Close Encounters episode?
I wanted to rewatch it anyways, and so I figured I'd kill two birds with one stone. So that's
there
it.
You go. What particularly about this movie made you want to rewatch it?
I don't know. I just feel like when I watched it, maybe I didn't appreciate it enough the first time, but I felt like it was a great movie and just wanted to see it again. And there's a lot of scenes that I really loved in it that have sort of stuck with me since I saw it like 4-ish years ago, maybe. Yeah. Also, I don't know if Nope is Aliens, but I think it's Aliens.
I have there's so much in that trailer that just screams this is about aliens.
Totally, like the looking up at the sky and the
and specifically that one. What really has me convinced is that one shot in the trailer with like that white fence and like the little feet walking under, like you could see under, and I'm like, they're alien feet. 100%. Like I'm expecting like little like the stereotypical looking alien
Yeah.
being to be like walking out from behind that. But you know what? The biggest twist that Jordan Peele could do to us is to convince us all this is about aliens and it's not.
Yeah.
But this is I guess, what were some of the things that really stuck out to you about the film, Foster?
So I loved it watching it this time around, so much so that it might even be top 3 Spielberg for me. Like this to me is like a 10 out of 10, I thought, honestly. Like beforehand, I would have said there were 3 10 out of 10s for me, which would be Jaws, Jurassic Park, and Schindler's List. This is right up there for me. I understand why it's not as high as those for most other people, but I think the filmmaking really kind of stands out here. Like those scenes, especially in that first half an hour, are pretty unrelenting, where we get little glimpses of the aliens, or we see like people's interactions with them. Like my favorite scene early on is when Richard Dreyfuss is in the car, and we've seen so many things in this movie at this point play with car headlights, and we're like, oh, is it aliens? No, it's just a car. Hey, right? But then at one point when he's sitting in his car, behind him, car headlights come up in the rear view mirror. He can see it. And then all of a sudden, the 2 headlights just float up. You know, that to me is like the coolest shot ever. It's so good. And so he just does such a good job, Spielberg, of creating that wonder and like, oh my gosh, feeling, I can't believe this is happening.
The climax of the film with all those ships, all the lights, like this is some next level special effects. Like this is a late 70s movie. And like this came out the same year as Star Wars, right? 1977. So like obviously Star Wars is much more accessible mainstream science fiction than this. But like because you know have adventure and like fun. And there's a lot of paranoia in this, but I feel like what's so interesting about this film is it kind of sets you up to think that something dangerous is going to happen. And then you get to the climax of this film, and I think that makes it so much more magical once we actually like experience what's actually going on, and just the lights, the ships, and like all of that stuff is just like, holy crap, it's all inspiring once you get to like the climax of this film. And like I'm sure this is probably more iconic than like my perception of it, but like I'm a little surprised that this isn't as like up there with so many people. And I guess it's because like this is more hard science fiction than like Jurassic Park and like E.T. Like obviously E.T. has aliens, but you have like this fun like kid perspective on it, and then like flying bicycles, and like obviously Jurassic Park is like one of the most iconic blockbusters of all time. And this is the kind of thing where it's like this is a slow burn. It's almost 2 hours and 20 minutes in some form of it. And it takes its time, and your character's slowly losing it. Slowly losing it, and making some of the most obnoxious models of a mountain I've ever seen throughout it. But Foster, what are some of the other things that really stuck out to you?
Well, so Richard Dreyfuss, I thought was really good. I just think he's great. I need to see more of his stuff. But I mean, I love him in Jaws, and I love him in this. He really perfectly sells that obsession. And I think that first half hour is really necessary too, so that you also buy into the obsession, because you know what you saw. He knows what he saw. Like if you don't buy into that, then he's just kind of just a bad father. So it's really important that they sell that. I wonder if part of the reason maybe it doesn't rank as highly for other people is like, the special effects are kind of jaw-dropping for the time, but like especially when they're flying around in that, like it's like at the 20-minute mark, which is how he gets the sunburn. Like I can imagine people watching that and being like, I can't quite buy into the fact that that's real because it is from the 70s. But again, for the time, it's amazing. Also, that mothership, that big one at the end, is so cool, and I love the way it's designed too, and the sound when it kind of hovers over them, the like that crazy deep. I was just doing the guy from Dune, you know what I'm talking about. I was unintentionally going there. Yeah, all the performances are good. Terry Garr is really good. So Melinda Dillon, I think, got nominated. She's really good too. And I was looking it up. Richard Dreyfuss won for something else in the same year. Otherwise, I feel like he probably would have been nominated.
Interesting.
The Goodbye Girl, I think.
Yeah, because the thing with Richard Dreyfuss for me, it's like he was such a big actor for a while, and he's still acting, but he's not like a Pacino or a De Niro that's still getting like big parts.
Yeah.
Like he's popping up in like straight to VOD crap. And like I feel like the last feature film that I saw with him in it that I could think of is Red.
Oh, is he in that?
Yeah, he's one of the antagonists. And he's almost unrecognizable at this point too. Because like he's put on a decent amount of weight. He has a beard, like a full beard and everything. And his voice is so much deeper and raspier. It kind of pulled to Billy Joel, I guess. It kind of has that vibe. And like, I saw something with him.
I'm looking up photos. That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
I've seen this movie too, like 10 years ago. I just have no memory of it.
Well, like, I enjoy Red quite a bit, but like, Richard Dreyfuss isn't the name you're going to remember from that. It has Bruce Willis, John Malkovich, Morgan Freeman, Helen Mirren in it. So it's kind of like, no, you're not going to remember Richard Dreyfuss. And he also has a pretty small part in it too. But like, it's sad because like he is a really talented actor. Like he steals a lot of scenes in Jaws. He does such a great job in this. He is a really important, like he anchors this whole entire film because like, obviously, like you need to have some kind of heart in this story because it could have easily been like a very technical, like investigative kind of film that just focused on Truffaut and Balaban's characters. You could have just had that, and there's plenty of mystery there. Those are some great scenes because you're just like, how the F did this boat get in the middle of the desert?
Yeah.
And like, the way Spielberg and John Williams just create the atmosphere and the mystery and the intrigue in those scenes are perfect. But like, there's no heart there. There's no like reason why we should connect with it. It's just intriguing and compelling. It's this man who saw what he saw. Nobody believes him. And he's compulsively just has this vision burned in his brain that he cannot let go. And us being able to see that if Richard Dreyfuss didn't give such a great performance in this, we wouldn't feel that connection. We wouldn't buy into it. And you could easily go over the top with this. Because, like, can you imagine, like, certain actors, like, imagine if it was, like, Al Pacino.
I was just, the moment you said it, like, could go over the top, that was the first name in my head.
Which is funny because I feel like 77 was the tail end of his big prime. Before the 80s, he drank too much and had a lot of problems in the 80s, and then came back as like Al Pacino in the 90s.
There was a shift somewhere.
It was Scent of a Woman. It was 100% Scent of a Woman. And then that was Pacino ever since. But like, I feel like Richard Dreyfuss also feels like an everyman. So like, he doesn't look like a movie star. And he's very believable and genuine as this man. And like, I'm trying to think. The last time I watched this had been years ago. And I don't know if I really picked up that it was Terry Garr, or if I clicked that like that was the same person from Young Frankenstein.
She's in every. Because I have the same thing where like I know I've seen her in everything, and in each individual movie I can register that it's her. But yeah, she's also in The Conversation, right? I think so.
Ooh. I don't think I've watched that or was recent enough to make that connection. I
Yeah.
know when I was watching After Hours for Scorsese, she was in. I'm like, oh look, it's Terry Garr.
She's in Tootsie, which I think she was nominated for. Yes, she was. Which I really like Tootsie. I think that's a fun movie.
I love that movie. But like this film has such an interesting cast to it because like Truffaut even is an interesting presence in this movie.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting choice. Like, who should I get to play this Frenchman? I'm going to ask a really famous French director. And because like I've seen quite a few of his films at this point, at least like the heavy hitters, like 400 Blows and Jules and Jim, which if somebody asked me what's the most French movie I've ever watched, I'm totally going to tell them it's Jules and Jim. What's the most French ending to a movie? Jules and Jim. Like 100%. But like he does really well. And like Bob Balaban is so perfect for that character. Because like I just love him in like Moonrise Kingdom, where he's just that guy that pops up and occasionally gives us information.
Yeah, when I was watching him in this, I think he's had like sneakily one of the greatest careers on the planet, because he's had like multiple phases. So like early on working with Steven Spielberg, and then he does all the Christopher Guest stuff where he's hysterical, by the way.
Yes.
And then working with like M. Night Shyamalan and Lady of the Water, and then now he's doing the Wes Anderson stuff. Like I love Bob Balaban.
Yeah, this has a really great cast, and it matches well with the incredible special effects and the whole visuals with everything. And this, like I said before, it's a great slow burn. And I think obviously Jaws is like the big like Spielberg John Williams combo to launch one of the most impressive director composer relationships in the history of film. But I don't think this film would work anywhere near as well as it did without what John Williams is doing in terms of like, there's something about this specific score. It's not one of his most like icon, like it's not something that people like, that's Jaws. And like, but there's something mysterious about it and magical about it, especially when you get into the like the end. And like I love the like the whole communication thing going on with them playing the tones, and just they're like and then it goes like it's like this ship is they're speaking 80s new wave and the ship's speaking dubstep.
Yes. Yeah.
And I guess, Foster, do you remember the first time you watched this when the ship opened and how you felt about it? Like I'm trying to remember when I watched this for the first time, but even just watching this 2 days ago, like when that door opens and they first reveal one of that thing, I'm just like,
thing that belongs in front of a gas station, you know, one of those little inflatable things.
You mean in Nope?
Oh, do they have one of those in the trailer?
They have a bunch of them in the trailer.
Okay.
And there's a really creepy shot in the trailer where they all start deflating slowly, and I'm just
I remember. Yeah.
I'm like,
oof.
I don't know what's going on here. But that thing was so weird. But then, well, you know, like the people just started coming out, and that was such a wonderful moment where the little kid comes out, and that's very emotional. And then you see them, and you're just like, aliens. And it's one of those moments where it's just like for me there was a sense of relief the first time I watched this, because it's like, oh my god, people aren't gonna die. Because like I felt like there was, on some level, you weren't sure what their intentions were. And I think because obviously a lot of other alien films have played with that, because, you know, like Independence Day, when all those people are on top of that building, it's like, welcome, and then it just opens up and then just like, boom, and like destroys all of them. It's just like, well, that's not good.
Mhm.
And come on, the movie's called Mars Attacks, so like you knew 100% things weren't going to go so well.
Yeah.
But even then, we're like peace, and then the dove, and they're like, it starts shooting everybody. But like I felt like one of the best parts of this film is you're not quite sure what the intention is because there's a sense of danger and like an ominous kind of feeling to a lot of this film, especially like when they're trying to get to the mountain and like everybody's being evacuated and they're like on front from the cops, and it's just
Mhm.
like there's a lot of like suspense building up at this point up until like such a wonderful like Spielbergian release in like the climax of this film.
Yeah. I have a lot of random part scenes like of the lead up that I just want to note. I mean, starting from the beginning, I think they set up the mystery so well. Like
Mhm.
they're starting in the desert, and yeah, like they have the 1945 planes that that are from 1945, you know, even though we're in the 70s. And then they talk to that guy who's like sitting almost shell shocked a little bit, saying like the sun came up last night, and it's saying to me, you know, it's so creepy and so weird. It reminds me of the opening of The Exorcist, because I think it's also like in the desert,
Yep.
and it's like just like a sort of prologue almost to kind of set the stage and like gives it a bit of authenticity.
Quick side note: is that in the actual film, the desert part in The Exorcist? Because I realize now I've only seen the director's cut
Oh, I don't know which one I've seen.
because
I think it's
I
in the
think
actual.
I think I read the first time you actually see Max von Sydow in the actual
Mm.
film is when he shows up at the house.
Oh, okay.
So I definitely haven't seen like the actual
Yeah,
one, but like
I don't know.
I do love that scene in like the desert and everything, setting up like all the mystery and stuff like that. I can
Yeah.
definitely see that it has that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, yeah. Just going chronologically, this is a completely different kind of scene, but just Richard Dreyfuss being funny when he's helping his son with the math problem, and he puts the train on the track, and
Mhm.
he's like if two-thirds of it are over here, blah 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 blah, and then he sets the train car on. Quickly, Brad, there are lives at stake. That's probably my favorite line of the movie. I I wrote that down right as it happened. I was like, that's too good. And then also in the first half hour, just so much great setup. Like, so the desert scene, then the kids' toys acting up.
Yeah.
Barry, I think the kid's name is. Yeah, like all the electronics in the house just start moving on their own. Then
And
they
this
talk.
is why I'm convinced that Steven Spielberg actually directed Poltergeist.
Oh, that's a list of shame for me. Still need to see it.
It's an urban legend that like Steven Spielberg actually
Yeah,
directed the movie, and I could
yeah,
100% see that if that was actually true or not.
yeah.
But
I
I am
mean,
not here to confirm or deny.
yeah, okay. He has a lot of horror stuff in his movies, like a shocking amount.
Yeah.
Like even in Jurassic Park, there's a lot of horror stuff, and he's had like some of the best jump scares of all time, I
Well, to
think.
be fair, I would argue Jurassic Park is a horror movie. It's just a Steven Spielberg one, and we just don't think about it that way. But like that
Yeah,
terrified me as a kid.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then like the shots towards the beginning where you see like the whole space, I can't even think of how to word it. Lots of houses, and then all the lights just turn off. You know, you're seeing it from a great distance.
Mhm.
Those shots are real creepy. The stuff with the airlines where they're talking about seeing a light source that shouldn't be there, you know, it's so good because like what it does so well is it shows you like the big picture, and it goes around to different areas where yeah the aliens would affect this type of person,
Mhm.
you know. Of course airlines would be one of the first. I thought while watching this movie, I thought this would make a really good like counterpiece, whatever, companion piece, there we go, I got
Mhm.
it, to Signs, like the M. Night movie,
Yeah,
because I love Signs. I think that's a great
I do
movie,
too.
but one of the cool things about Signs is it's just this one family. So you're seeing an alien invasion from the point of view of just like a couple people, and it's really self-contained. And all the big picture stuff is just background noise, whereas this is a lot of the big picture stuff. So I feel like these two would work really well together.
I think Spielberg did a great job of balancing both, because
Sure. Yeah.
I think it could easily be like, well, I want to get back to Richard Dreyfuss, or like I want to get back to the Truffaut stuff, but like I feel like it's doing a great balancing act.
It is
shifting back between them.
And I'm sure M. Night was inspired by this movie, because wasn't he supposed to be the next Spielberg? Like, wasn't that the Time magazine cover or whatever it was?
I thought it was the next Hitchcock, but I don't.
Oh,
I was like 8.
Okay.
when Sixth Sense came out.
Well, I was a newborn.
So there you go.
So,
but I can see that, honestly.
Yeah.
Those comparisons and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the genre hopping a little bit too, like the smaller scale mystery stuff, the sort of superhero movie with Unbreakable, the aliens, you know. Anyways, then let's see, the car scene I think is so great when the lights rise above him, and then just all those shots too, like the way they have to do like some sort of Inception hallway spinning type thing with that car in order to get that one shot where all the objects start falling from all directions.
Yeah,
that's really cool. And then when it finally winds down and he takes a deep breath, and then the flashlight turns on and goes, you know, like he scares himself with the flashlight, and then he scares himself again with the car. So good. It's so good. And then also like with Bob Balaban and Truffaut and that whole stuff, and I think they're with the United Nations, and they send out the signal of the 5 notes, and they get in return the coordinates, and they rush to get that globe from the other room. They're like, no, careful, this is a $2,500 globe. But like little moments like that and the urgency really, really sell this. It's so good.
That was a great moment of watching for me, because my now wife made a comment about like how obnoxious that globe was, and I'm like, well, that's government's money for you.
Yeah,
dropping $2,500 on a globe.
Sure,
that's how they spend our money.
But, yeah, and then showing it from the perspective also of people like Richard Dreyfuss or Barry the Kid, who had that actual experience with the aliens, who saw them in their ships. And then you see like the young kid playing those 5 notes on his little xylophone thing. That's really creepy too. You're like, oh my gosh, somehow it's been like implanted in their heads. It's real creepy. It's so good. Let's see what else I have here. Oh, the press briefings and stuff that they do, and they like bring in the military to talk about the alien. Like everything about it just feels so legitimate. Like this is how it would happen if it really happened. And of course, people aren't going to believe Richard Dreyfuss. He looks like a crazy person in this movie.
Half of his face burnt.
Yeah, of course. And then towards the end, like building up to the climax, like you were talking about when we arrived there. And then you see like the dead animals just on the side of the road, and then people wearing the masks, and you see the military base, and you hear like helicopters just in the background, and then so many of the shots too, you just see like a little helicopter flying above people as they're talking. So good. But then the moment when you realize, I think it's Truffaut who mentions it, he and Bob Balaban are talking to someone else in this room about how it wasn't just Richard Dreyfuss, it was a whole lot of other people who also came, and you were like, oh my gosh, so this story that we've seen play out with Richard Dreyfuss, multiply it by like hundreds, you know. That's crazy. It's such a good moment when you realize how huge this is, you know, because like it validates the fact that it's more than just Richard Dreyfuss. It wasn't an illusion. Like this is real, and it is kind of creepy, like you're saying. They build it up to be like a scary moment, and then the ending sequence is so amazing. I really loved this. I'm so happy I rewatched this. The ending climax is just perfect, and it's really unexpected too. Even up until right when the mothership comes, they're still building it up as if it's going to be some horrific, crazy thing. Like the the mothership thing comes after by the way, a bunch of little ships come and they sort of survey the land, and you realize midway through, you're like, oh my gosh, they were just surveying the land and something bigger is coming. And then you see the mothership and the shadow that gets cast over them. Apparently this was a little bit of a mistake, because of course that ship has a million lights on it, so it shouldn't cast a shadow that drastic, but they had done the shadow shot before they had actually designed the ships. So fun fact for you, I guess.
I feel like that's one of those kinds of things where it's like, it is a continuity error.
Yeah.
But is it worth it?
Oh, it's so
to
good.
like have that effect in the movie?
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah. I didn't sit there thinking like,
no, I didn't even notice it either. I was just
reading. But that ship shouldn't be making a shadow.
Yeah. Ding. Right. And so just the way that climax is constructed is so cool, because it is like you're on the edge of your seat, as are the characters in the movie. And that giant synthesizer thing they have behind them, that's so cool. I don't even know how you come up with a scene like this. Have you seen the clip? It's with James Lipton interviewing Steven Spielberg about the movie. It's just like a 30-second clip. It's like one of those things that probably pops on your recommended, and maybe I'll click on that someday. But he says to Steven Spielberg, he says, your father was a computer scientist, your mother was a musician. How do the aliens in this movie communicate with one another, with the humans at the end of your film? And then Steven Spielberg just doesn't even say anything, just has kind of like a realization. He's like, they're communicating using music and computers, they're like sharing music through computers, and he's like, I never realized that, but thank you for that. And it was a cool moment, and it's just like a 30-second clip. It's worth looking up. But like the way that subconsciously you can be kind of influenced by your past, it's really cool. So I love the ending of the movie.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting perspective on filmmaking process and just the creative process in general. It's like sometimes you just have such a deep, like, this is how this needs to be, and you're not even quite sure why, but then there's so much that makes sense about it in hindsight. I've
heard a lot of people compare this movie to the filmmaking process, as in Richard Dreyfuss's character is like a director who's like obsessive and has to have things this certain way, even if it negatively affects your family, but because they don't understand your art or creative process or whatever, you
don't understand my mountain.
So like even that was probably subconsciously something that was going through Spielberg's head in the way that he had to make that character relatable to him in order to portray it. I also have a few random fun facts, mostly just from the IMDb trivia, if you want me to rattle a couple off. Apparently Stanley Kubrick really loved this kid, Cary Guffey, who's played Barry, and wanted him to play Danny in The Shining. That's fun fact number one. Fun fact number two, the way, in the final scene, the way the clouds kind of billow outwards into the sky, it looks amazing. That was done with a tank of water, and half of it was salt water, half of it was fresh water, and then they inject paint into the water and it billows out like that. So that's kind of cool. I would love to see a behind the scenes thing of that. Another fun fact, apparently Paul Schrader wrote the original script and then it just didn't work out. It went through some rewrites and they eventually got someone else. So
can you imagine?
I know.
My God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What this movie would have been like.
Yeah. A lot of silent internal thinking and writing in a journal. And also, this is just because I'm not the best with history, but that ship that appears in the desert that you mentioned, that's a real ship that went missing and was only discovered in like the 80s or something like that. But I thought that was really cool, like to incorporate real history like that, as in like these aliens within Close Encounters explain real world mysteries. I love when movies do that sort of thing. It's cool to me.
Some conspiracy theories going on here.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's like ship either was taken by aliens or went to the Bermuda Triangle.
Because there are a lot of creepy real world mysteries too, but
unless there's aliens in the Bermuda Triangle. See, now we're cooking up.
Makes you think.
We're cooking up some theories here. Yeah. I always find it so interesting, the dynamic between Spielberg and Kubrick. And like thinking about like, what if Kubrick directed Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
That'd be pretty incredible.
Like this,
Yeah.
because like this seems like the kind, like if you think about a lot of Spielberg stories, I don't think a lot of them would be exactly what Kubrick would want to try to tell.
Yeah.
Honestly, but like
Kubrick doing dinosaurs.
this 100% seems
Totally.
like something that he would probably be interested in. And you know, the like true amalgamation of that is artificial intelligence. Because like there's something like, I enjoy the film a lot and I own it too, but there's just something about it that just feels off. And like and I know it's the ending. Like it's like if Kubrick actually directed that, that movie would have ended at a very specific point and you would have felt completely hopeless and devastated. I'm like, yep, that totally would have been Kubrick's movie. But you know, it's an interesting thing to think about, and because like, you know, director, like sometimes it's hard to like take a step back and realize like directors are all people too, and like have friends and stuff like that and have like peers. And you know, like Scorsese was very close with like Coppola, and you know, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas are very close friends, obviously, because then they did the whole of Indiana Jones together and stuff like that. And it's so interesting. It's like if you were to interchange some of these directors on some of these stories and stuff like that, because like obviously Spielberg has had such a prolific career with so many different kinds of movies. And this is definitely one of his, I feel like one of his most mature ones, especially towards the beginning in this period. Because like I know coming up, it's like I have like 1941, which is just I have a lot of thoughts for my next episode about that. But then you have Raiders, which is like the perfect pitch perfect adventure film.
It's
like
so good. Yeah.
There's no, I feel like there's no flaws, there's no flat. This is like the prototypical, like, bam, this is what an adventure film should be like, kind of thing. And I definitely appreciated Close Encounters a lot more watching it now than I think the first time I watched it in college.
Oh yeah.
Because like 30-year-old Shane appreciated this a lot more than like 21-year-old Shane. But I guess, Foster, do you have any final thoughts on Close Encounters?
I mean, we could just quickly mention there's 3 versions. Which one did you watch? Do you know?
I think I just watched the theatrical cut.
Okay, I watched the director's cut. So yours was the first, mine was the third, and there was a second one in between, which is apparently the no good one because they showed the inside of the ship at the end. And apparently Spielberg really regrets ever having a cut that shows the inside of the ship. But
yeah, we don't want to see inside it. That kind of like,
no, it kind of ruins it. I don't even necessarily want to look up clips of it.
I just got this, which is the 40th anniversary 4K.
Yeah.
And oh, just like this cover is incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to see what versions this has. I'm guessing, oh, it includes all 3.
Yeah.
So I know not to watch the special edition.
Yeah, because what happened is the first one I think he wasn't completely happy with. It was just slightly rushed, and he wanted to tweak a couple little scenes. So the special edition added a couple scenes and tightened up some things or extended some scenes by a couple seconds, just minor things. But the studio made him put in that a little moment where it goes inside the ship, from what I understand. So really, yeah, he was able to fix the couple little things he wanted to fix, but he wasn't actually happy with the new cut either. So then for a while he was not happy with either cut. So then finally he made the director's cut, which has those little extra scenes that he liked, but does not have the scene going inside the ship at the end. So fun fact for anybody.
so interesting, the creative process.
Yeah, it is.
Because like I feel like there's just like this weird feeling that I have that like a decent chunk of Ridley Scott's misses are probably actually great movies somewhere. His cut sitting in like a vault somewhere.
Yeah, where's his Robin Hood director's cut, right?
I'm convinced that one probably isn't any better. But like Kingdom of Heaven, like you watch that like full director's cut version, there's something else about it. And like you like obviously Blade Runner is the movie that cannot just stay dead. Like,
yeah.
But like I have the final cut, and that's the only version I've ever watched.
Me too.
Because I got that for $2 on DVD at Best Buy on Black Friday one year. Best $2 I've ever spent.
Yeah, I think I got it the same way. I think there's a cut of Alien too that has some extra stuff that a lot of people like.
Yes, I know the one big one is the reveal of the pods that get introduced in Aliens, because you see Dallas like all like in that pod thing where they like lay inside them, and like they basically impregnate all the bodies, and then like they when the time is ready. So like I don't think that's necessary.
Sure.
Like I feel like if besides the fact that it's extremely obvious it's a dude in a suit going like at Dallas in the vent, but like I think it's a much more effective that you never see him again. But like that's an interesting world building idea, and I'm glad that James Cameron incorporated that into Aliens. But like it's so interesting because like there's some films that are not worth watching unless it's the director's cut.
Yeah.
And then there's some films where it's just like, but why? And like sometimes, like some of them, you're just like, well, I know why the studio stepped in here. It probably was just like, dude, relax. Yeah. And obviously, as a humongous Lord of the Rings fan, like the extended editions are so popular. And like, I will say they're flawed. Like there's definitely scenes in those extended editions that should have been cut. And I'm looking at all of those scenes that make Gimli look like even more of an idiot. Then, like, there's just so much comic relief that they cut out that I'm like, thank God, because like this is silly. Like, especially in Return of the King, where he's stepping on all the skulls and he's just like crunch, 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 and I'm just like,
yeah. So I've seen this extended so many times that I don't even remember which scenes are extended and which ones aren't.
There's some amazing ones that I'm like, damn, how does not get in the movie?
Yeah, I know the Mouth of Sauron scene I love. And Saruman's death isn't even in the original. That's
brutal. That probably would have got a rated R.
Yeah, that's true. But it's like kind of a significant he's a significant character, you know.
Well, and I think they tried to go with just it's simpler to be like, he never left his tower again, instead of like watching him brutally get impaled. That was intense. That is like quite the death scene.
Yeah.
And then I love the scene with where they show Osgiliath before Boromir leaves into the hours, because that just had so many layers to like to Denethor, Faramir, and Boromir. It's just like, why'd you cut that? Probably for timing, because this is already a 3-hour movie. But anyway, so if you do have the opportunity, then definitely next time I'm watching this, I'll watch the director's cut. I decided to just watch the theatrical cut because I'm like, you know what? I haven't watched this in a while. We'll just go simple. Yeah. But now I'm really interested to see what the director's cut is like.
I think people say both are good. Yeah.
To never watch the special cut.
Yeah, I also looked it up. There is a Robin Hood director's cut for Ridley Scott.
Why don't we know about it? Because it also probably sucks.
There's one for American Gangster, Black Hawk Down, The Martian, Gladiator, The Counselor. The people were screaming for the count.
I feel like Ridley Scott's just the kind of person that just can't sit happy.
Yeah.
with his movies. I'm sure there'll be a director's cut of The Last Duel and House of Gucci.
House of Gucci, yes.
House of Gucci is
Gotta
going to be
see-
3 hours long.
Yeah, gotta see more of Paolo, right? Mm.
I want at least one other scene of Al Pacino yelling, because honestly, at that point in the movie, that gave me life again. Because I'm like, oh my God, is he gonna do it? And then he's like, how could you? Ah! And I'm just like, oh my God, thank God. This movie was like zapping me from energy.
Yeah, he was having fun in The Irishman too. I remember like Pesci comes in and is doing like a real slow, like meaty performance, and then Al Pacino comes in, oh, banging his hand on the table.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So hope you all enjoyed our little anecdotes about director's cuts. But now, Foster, time to give some people some recommendations. So what would you like to recommend to our lovely listeners?
Yeah, I'm going to recommend Dead Ringers, which is a Cronenberg movie. It's from the 90s, I think. I can't actually remember, but I'm just recommending this because of the new Cronenberg movie that's coming out. If you want a good Cronenberg movie to watch, this is my personal favorite. It's not necessarily like the one he's known for, which is probably The Fly, I think would be his biggest one, maybe, which is like real body horror. But this one is not body horror. There's some weirdness, like the movie follows Jeremy Irons, who plays twins. And I think this performance is one of the best performances of all time, like ever given by an actor. It's just really subtle and incredible. So like if you're watching really closely, you will be able to notice the difference between the twins. But if you're watching it in the background, you won't notice. It's like just the perfect level of subtlety where there's just real light differences between these characters, but they both feel really fully fleshed out. And he's like just acting opposite himself most of the movie too. It's really, really incredible. And the movie also is, because it is so subtle, it doesn't just tell you which twin is on screen at one moment or another. You have to kind of intuit from the scene. It's really pretty brilliant. And though the performance is subtle for most of the movie, the last third, Jeremy Irons does get to kind of show off a little bit more how great of an actor he is. And I read something recently which suggested that this performance was so beloved but didn't get nominated, which is why maybe shortly after he won for Reversal of Fortune. I should check that just to make sure that the years line up. But
yeah, because I checked, it was 88. Dead Ringers came out.
There we go.
And I think Reversal of Fortunes was early 90s.
It was 1990. So yeah, that would make a lot of sense, because like he's good in Reversal of Fortune, but you don't watch that and think, wow, that needs to win an Oscar necessarily. But you watch him in this and you're like, wow, this is incredible. He really is like one of the best actors ever. And this is his best performance, I think, by a mile, that I've seen at least. Although I've loved him in a million things.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, like, Jeremy Irons is one of those kinds of actors that is an absolutely incredible actor.
He's so good.
And even like, this is gonna sound so silly because I just watched the Penteverett. And like he does the narration over the credits, like the main titles, and he's like, "Don't you dare touch that skip button! You don't just get Jeremy Irons to do your main." That show is ridiculously meta to like a fault sometimes, but like I'm just like, him as Scar in Lion King is amazing. Like I feel like that's
so good. Yes.
That's one of those kinds of voice performances that transcends it just being a voice performance.
It might be my favorite animated voice performance ever, honestly. Like I can't think of one off the top of my head that comes close. It's so good. So good.
Now, I didn't get to watch anything off my watch list since my last recording. Been a little busy.
Is something going on, Shane?
Hey. I'm gonna leave it at that. But I did watch a couple of my own movies. It was funny because part of my bachelor party, we had an in-between time between seeing Top Gun and what turned out to be me going to an arcade, which was a lot of fun. We watched Step Brothers. So, and I can confirm at my wedding, I said goodbye to my friend Bobby, doing the awkward hug. Turned into a high five that Adam Scott and Will Ferrell does at the end of the movie. But the actual one of my movies that I watched recently that I want to recommend is The Girl with All the Gifts. And this is a post-apocalyptic, I guess it's a zombie movie. Like, they're zombies, I guess. The whole crux of it, the world has been infected by a fungus that turns people into these like zombies, and they're like a horde. So like they're like fungi. They are a bunch of individual elements of a bigger network. So like they all act as one. And there's these kids that were born from infected parents that are hybrids. So like the spore's not like not completely taken over their body, but it's more like a symbiote. And when they're near like flesh, they go like, and it's like really creepy. Like these kids turn out to be really creepy. And basically this base where they're trying to find a cure gets taken down, and then it's just a group of people on the run from these infected people. And it has Gemma Arterton, Patty Considine, and Glenn Close in it. And I'm a huge fan of Patty Considine, so that's what like I really enjoyed him in this. And Glenn Close is like the scientist trying to find the cure.
No, I love Patty Considine.
And
Also Gemma Arterton from Prince of Persia fame, which I think I saw because I was like 10. I think I saw it a couple times in theaters. Sorry, go ahead.
Like I'm trying to remember like actual like great performances of hers or like strong performances, but like for the life of me, all I could think of is Strawberry Fields right now. From Quantum of Solace, where she gets painted in oil. She was such a terrible, that was one of the worst parts of Quantum of Solace, is like that felt like right out of a 60s Bond movie. And Quantum of Solace does not feel like a 60s Bond movie. It just felt so out of place. But anyway, this is such an interesting sci-fi movie. Like, I think it struggles trying to differentiate itself from like the influx of like zombie movies and stuff like that. But like I think the really strong cast and like the interesting fungal twist on it makes it interesting enough to check out. So like I definitely like that. And I struggled to pick one of these, but I'm just going to mention both of them. There's two great big studio films that came out this weekend. I love the Bob's Burgers movie. And I've been watching Bob's Burgers since season 1 when it came out. So like I'm a huge fan of the show, and it is the perfect like blow up of the show into an actual film. They raise stakes, they turn into a full-blown musical. It's a fun ride, and like every character, like all the Belchers get a great chance to shine in it, and so did the Fish Odors. I just love Kevin Kline and Zach Galifianakis in that show. They're so terrible, and like it's a murder mystery. Somebody gets murdered at the beginning of the movie. I'm like, is it Bob's Burgers? And so like they do lift up the stakes. And then of course Top Gun Maverick, I got to see for my bachelor party on Saturday. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I like, this might be recency bias, but I'm just gonna say this. I think this might be one of the most impressive sequels ever. Like how it built on the first film. And like I'm one of those people that sees through a lot of the nostalgia. I'm not the hugest fan of the first Top Gun. Like it's really cheesy and just like 80s America, like propaganda film. This is a great movie. And I was Joseph Kosinski, who directed Oblivion, and he did Tron Legacy too, right? So here's the thing. Those movies might be really derivative from a script standpoint, but they directed the hell out of those movies. This movie, oh my god, I was on the edge of my seat. Like, oh my god. While they were doing all the dog fights and stuff like that. Yeah. And we're just going to ignore like the whole entire climax of the movie is just Star Wars.
Yeah.
I was sitting talking about it afterwards. I'm like, it was a trench. They had to shooting missiles into a specific small area. I'm just like, and they basically had targeting computers because they had like the laser focus stuff. And I'm just like, but that's okay. Because I didn't even think about that while watching the movie because I was just so exhilarated. Like Top Gun Maverick is such a great sequel and a great film. And it jumped into my top 10 this year. And for perspective, I've seen 300 movies this year. So like,
oh my gosh,
that's saying something. That was not meant
it's May.
That was not meant as a flex. That was just meant for context.
No, I know. I just can't even believe it. I think I've seen like 30. I mean, it's in like, it's my number maybe 5-ish, something around there. It's awesome. I loved it. Tom Cruise is insane. I think he's the greatest action star of all time. I don't even know who else comes close.
I would agree, honestly.
Yeah.
And he does some legit acting in this too.
Oh,
like
he's so good.
from an emotional standpoint too, on top of like, because like the physicality that he brings to his movies are just amazing. And my God, the amount of charisma that dude has.
He is scary. When you watch interviews with him and he just makes like alarming eye contact with whoever he's talking to. Well, I don't ever want to meet him because then he's going to abduct me into his Scientology stuff. And I'll be like, okay, Tom Cruise.
This is my number 7 as of right now. And like, I was real close to giving this a 5 out of 5. I wound up giving it a 4.5 because it gets predictable. And like, there's definitely moments where it's just like, and it did pull that. I don't feel like I saw this for a while, but like it legit had like the 4th act structure because there's a lot of blockbusters were starting to do like a 4th act. And I think the most egregious one was like, and I hate bringing this movie up, Independence Day Resurgence, where it's just like, they beat them, but wait, there's more.
Yeah.
And then you're running from a giant alien that's like the size of a freaking building. I'm like, what the hell is this shit? But like, this does lean into that. But like, the 4th act of this movie is actually great. So
it's so good.
And that was interesting because like, they use that to add so much depth to that relationship between Miles Teller and Tom Cruise. I'm like, and also when I don't know why I didn't realize this before. I didn't realize Miles Teller was 6 feet tall. Like, I never got that from like Whiplash or anything like that. And then bam, he's standing next to Tom Cruise. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And Tom Cruise probably has like lifted shoes on.
Yeah.
Like Robert Downey Jr. does.
Yeah. I think what's so good though with the action is it's so clear. Like you can tell exactly where everyone is at every moment, which is you can't really say for the original one. It's so nice to like know exactly where everybody is, what's happening, what's the goal. It was just so crisp. I loved it.
That's the thing. I am a self-professed action movie snob. Like I'm so like, a movie, it'll kill a movie for me if it doesn't have well choreographed, well shot action in it, and I'll rip it to shreds.
I feel like there's no excuse at this point, just because there's so many great examples of great action, like even just in the past 5 years, like with the John Wick movies, you know. So like the Marvel movies, they're kind of slacking sometimes with some of their action scenes. Yeah, exactly.
And like, even I love Captain America Civil War so much, but even at the beginning of the movie, some of that shaky cam crap, I'm just like, come on. But this was such a great collaboration of Tom Cruise, Chris McQuarrie, and Joseph Kosinski, because I'm like, honestly, I'm like, why didn't Christopher McQuarrie just direct this movie? When I heard out Kosinski directed it, and then I saw he wrote it, and I'm just like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And then we're getting 2 more Christopher McQuarrie Mission Impossible movies. So
man, that trailer is doing some things for me.
Reckoning Part 1.
Yeah, and the way the music, like it starts as kind of generic trailer excitement music, and then it gradually transitions into the Mission Impossible theme as it gets louder. It's It's so good.
Oh, Tom Cruise is going to be on a tear with this year, and then the next two Mission Impossible movies the next 2 years.
Oh man. So I've never seen a Mission Impossible movie in theaters. Because I had not seen them all when Fallout came out, so I just didn't go to see it. So this will be my first one, but I'm so excited.
I had the first Mission Impossible on VHS and used to watch that a lot when I was younger. It took me until I was an adult to see 2 and 3. I saw Ghost Protocol in theaters and wrote about it for my film class that I was taking, because I had 3 papers in that class. The first one, we all had to see the artist and write about the acting in it. And then the next 2, I got to pick what I went and saw. And the next one, I'm like, Ghost Protocol is coming.
Yeah, you went polar opposite.
Yeah, so like I got to talk a lot about like his physical acting and all the stuff that Tom Cruise does. And then I did The Descendants is the last one, which that was, love that movie. And then I don't think I saw Rogue Nation in theaters. I think I watched that later, but I saw Fallout in Dolby. I felt like I was on that motorcycle with him in that one scene. I'm like, felt like there was actual cars driving by me in the theater. It was that crazy.
Yeah.
But yes, so go see Top Gun Maverick, add to its $150 million in the opening weekend, this extended weekend. And also show Bob's Burgers some love, because I love Bob's Burgers. But Foster, thank you so much for coming on this time.
Thanks for having me again, as always.
And thank all of you for tuning in and always supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.